In this video, I want to talk to you about how to do your analysis. So at this point, you should have been able to go through and extract from your final set of articles some of the main details, and especially some of those corresponding to your PICO, creating a summary data matrix in Excel or Google Sheets, although I do prefer Excel when possible. It's a little bit easier to manipulate. What I want to do here is now show you how you can begin to spot patterns using some of the analytical tools available to you in these software packages. And this is where really the magic begins to happen, that you begin to spot findings. It's like there's a little bit of detective work. And it's really important at this step because these patterns that you see, you're going to later use to form the basis of how you organize and structure your results section. So as you do your analysis, you already want to be thinking about, how am I going to best communicate these important insights that I'm seeing here? How am I going to structure my results section to allow these important points to really breathe, take shape, and be easy, accessible to understand to my audience of readers and peer reviewers. So let me take us over to an Excel extraction sheet by one of our students who we've worked with in the past, who did a fantastic job. So let me just come over here to Excel. Okay, so here we are in Excel, and you can see at first glance the data in all its messiness. And as you can see, you have a similar set of headings as you've seen before: the study, the year of the study. In this case, the other, she separated this out, a link to the study because that was also helpful. She wanted to refer back to it. The study, again, err on the side of taking too much detail. You might not need this. You can always hide this and make it disappear. If you take too much, you're not going to regret it. You take too little, you're going to have to go back again and again and then fish out information for all the different articles in a structured, systematic way multiple times. So take too much. You can see the country. There's some columns here: high income country, low middle income country, which she later recoded to enable us to do some interesting things in the analysis, as well as the continent, study design, the database. She was also thinking forward to some quantitative work. Were any of these databases available and potentially interesting for some quantitative studies if she wanted to follow up? So she took that out for herself. Then there were different groups. For her, there were some in elderly, some in children. Another point of variation, she took specific data on how many people were included in the sample. Importantly, in her study, her intervention factor was a measure of social capital, and she took how that was operationalized and measured here, and looked at whether that was operationalized at the individual neighborhood level and the outcomes. So very clear definition of the outcomes, which she later coded as were these curative or preventative in nature. So I found a sub-classification of the types of outcomes that were looked at. That can be useful if you're looking at, again, I use the example burnout a lot. Maybe you want to look at differences in the one burnout scale versus another burnout scale, or one measure of depression versus another measure of depression, or maybe you're looking at economic outcomes and environmental outcomes. You might want to split these up for various reasons. And finally, she looked at the different modeling and different bias domains that the models attempted to adjust for to ensure some validity of results. Here you have the result, and also she recoded a short result, saying, well, was it positive, null, or negative? There was no relationship, there was a positive relationship, or there was a negative relationship. And she also tried to code the quality of the study. We have a dedicated video on coding the quality of the study, which for the vast majority of you will not be necessary. It's an optional step, and we have a dedicated video on it. So put that to the side for now because it's not really going to affect your analysis and your ability to spot patterns for the most part. So I would just bracket that. Okay, so you have all this data on this messiness. It's going to be pretty hard to look at and say, okay, what's the pattern here? Well, I can look at this and see, okay, well, a lot of these studies appear to be positive. Some of them appear to be negative, but the picture ends up being pretty mixed. So this could be helpful. You might want to summarize and say later on, okay, of the 35 studies I looked at, how many had a positive association, how many had a negative, how many were null, to give you an overline headline picture of the results. What you want to do, though, is you want to be able to test specific questions here. And this is where the magic begins to happen. Suppose I think, okay, well maybe there's more of a positive impact in developing countries. Perhaps they start from a worse starting point and they have more to benefit from this intervention that she's looking at. Here's what you can do. You can highlight your columns. Just highlight everything we want to look at. And let's come here to sort. Custom sort. And you can choose your columns. So your data has headers because you should have put a label at the top. So click that. And so now I can study by high income, low and middle income country. And this is going to be pretty helpful because now I can see all my high income countries here and all my low income, middle income countries here. And as I carry this through, as I look over, now I can begin to see is there a greater likelihood, okay, no association positive, no association positive, looks pretty mixed. Was that any different in the pattern that I'm seeing from the high income countries? And perhaps as I look through it, I might see, okay, well, the high income countries have the same probability of having a positive finding as the low income countries. That tells me, look, results didn't seem to really differ so much between high and low income countries. And this is the principle. You want to carve up your data and kind of slice it from different angles, taking different points of view of things that you could be important as in the studies and giving different results when looking at the same question. Maybe the results are going to differ by the type of method used, maybe by the study setting, maybe by the type of method used, maybe by the year of the study. Maybe more recent studies were done in a different way. Maybe it could buy a greater sample size. These are all elements that I want you to interrogate in your data, doing just what I've done here, sort the data along these dimensions and look to see if things differ. So I could do the same. Study design. Let's see if the cross-sectional ones differ from the few cohorts that we have. So I'll click here and now I'm going to carve the data up in a different way. Highlight the data. I'm going to go to custom sort. And this time I'm going to go to the study design. And let's look. So, okay, I've got my few cohorts. There's only a few cohorts up here. And I can see here, prospective cohort. This was titled in a different way, and this is sometimes you might want to make a new column coding this as cohort so that when you sort like this, they all line up neatly. But let's take a look and see if anything here just kind of jumps out. And I say no association, no association. It may be, well, hey, the better, stronger studies that were cohorts, which are stronger than the cross-sectional studies, they found no association. This might lead you to believe that actually when the studies move beyond this type of weaker design to a stronger design, there was no relationship anymore. Or maybe you find a stronger relationship. You want to basically kind of carve up your data in these different ways, which is going to enable you to see patterns and see important differences that you're then really going to want to highlight as you write up your paper. Again, this is hard to give you a one-size-fits-all description of because it's going to vary considerably based on your field. But almost certainly, you're going to want to take a look by different elements of your PICO. And here, what have I done? I definitely looked at the element of the population or the country, and I also looked at the study design. And I might probably subsequently do another same thing, look by the way they measured, in this case it was social capital. I would probably break this up and recode social capital and look at the different ways that was measured and see if that was playing a role. Again, these tables are going to be indispensable because where we go next in writing up your results, we're going to try to summarize quantitatively in many cases. Again, depending on the number of articles you have, I'm going to come to that in the next video. And we're going to try to summarize some of these patterns. So here we've got a total of, let's look at it, we have 32 studies, minus 1, so we've got looks like 31 studies. So I would probably go through, for example, and say, of these 31 studies, right, 18 had positive associations. These patterns did not appear to differ whether they were in high or low middle income countries. In high income countries, I don't know, there were 10 out of 18 positive, and in low income countries there were, I don't know, say 6 out of 13, for example. That's the kind of reporting that you're going to do. You might report as well the majority of these operationalize social capital based on the individual level. That's really helpful because that will also help you point out and say, there were only 4 cohort studies Because you might say later on, well, there's a big gap. We need to do more cohort studies, or we need to do more measurements of social capital at the neighborhood level. Or you might find very few were done in developing countries. That's a big gap in our knowledge, and that's something for future research. You're going to start to see from this not only the patterns, but also kind of blind spots in the data where we just don't have enough of a picture. That for some reason, other researchers have just neglected an area, and we need to flesh this out in the future to address that gap or that blind spot. This can really help you in your future research to identify low-hanging fruit for where you could make a big impact on the field with a small amount of effort. And I'm inherently lazy, and by lazy I mean efficient, in trying to find that low-hanging fruit for you, because that can really kickstart your career and help you emerge as a leader fast in your field. So I hope you find this helpful. I know this can be confusing, and you look at this, some of you might never have done this kind of analysis before. It's really good practice, and it's a good habit to get into, because all these principles that you're locking in here, these are fundamentals of good research skills for analyzing data that is going to carry over, and you're going to see will translate. Some of you will go on to do our quantitative course or some of our qualitative courses, and some of these same principles are going to come back for how to analyze data and see things that other people can't see when looking at data. So don't worry about the messiness at this stage. I really want you to focus on trying to carve up your data and even have a look. Even if you don't think there's a pattern there, that's okay. Have a look anyway using the custom sort up here that I've just done. One other thing I wanted to show you just to help is a freeze panes function. And this here, if you see, if I don't freeze panes, as you scroll over, it just goes like this. I find it really helpful to freeze panes right about here so that I click freeze panes. And this will enable the leftmost columns to stay locked as I scroll through. So as I'm looking at the result, I'm making sure I'm looking at the same study. The other thing that you may want to do, and sometimes you can see here this student has done, is you might want to make extra sheets if it makes it easier to manage. Maybe you want to just look at a few columns in detail. You can hide columns, hide and unhide without deleting them, or you can move things over to a new sheet. The other thing that you may want to do when you know you've got a result that is particularly important, you may want to start actually going on and creating figures to summarize them. Maybe very simple bar charts or line charts, and I'll share with you in summarizing the results section some examples of those. All your data are here, and you can treat them as such. And so, for example, you say for the high-income countries, you might have a bar for how many were positive, how many were null, how many were negative, compared with low and middle-income countries. Again, I would reserve that only for the end. When you've done your analysis and you know, this is particularly interesting, this is going to be particularly important to report, and I'm going to want to feed that back. Where I want you to get to at the end of this is I want you to have maybe imagine 3 to 5 big points that you're seeing from your analysis that you want to highlight. I want you to have those 3 to 5 big points and write them down. And you're going to see an accompanying worksheet that's going to ask you to document what are those 3 big simple one-line points to make. For me here, looking at this, I might say there was no major difference across high and low income countries. Or I might say cohort studies tended to find null associations as compared with cross-sectional studies. I want you to just kind of note those down so you don't lose sight of them because they're going to be really important to come to as we write up the results. Hope this helped you. Again, any questions, don't hesitate to reach out or participate in our drop-in systematic review sessions. Look forward to seeing you in the next video where we're going to go into how to start structuring and writing up the results section.